One of Sarah's guilty pleasures, Creative Camera magazine. She's got hundreds of these things. She likes the real old school photography, the stuff from the 1950s and the 60s and the 70s. That's her thing. That's what she really likes as a photographer. Now, this one's from April 1972 and it cost the princely sum of 25 pence. But what's interesting in this particular edition is that there are some photography quotes, and we all like a quote on photography, don't we? I mean, let's be honest, this channel's name comes from a quote on photography. But anyway, this quote is from the American Annual of Photography in 1944, and it is by the late great Ansel Adams. And the quote says, "Let us hope that categories will be less rigid in the future. There has been too much placing photography in little niches: commercial, pictorial, documentary, creative. Definitions of this kind are inessential and stupid. Good photography remains good photography no matter what we name it." Photographers, we like a good box. We like to put ourselves into boxes. We like to put ourselves into categories. We like to put ourselves into genres. Not all of us. Some photographers don't. Some photographers are quite happy flitting between genres, between mediums and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, we like to put ourselves into boxes. In this world of social media, you have an audience. If you're in a particular box and you call yourself something, it's easy for a certain demographic of audience to understand what it is your content is going to be about. And it's the same on YouTube. If you put yourself in a box and you call yourself a particular type of photographer, YouTube understands which part of the viewing audience would be interested in your videos. So it's very helpful to put ourselves into boxes when it comes to audience. It's also something which camera companies like to do as well. The only way they can market cameras effectively is to market them to a certain demographic. So what they do is they put photographers in a box, like there's wildlife photographers or landscape photographers or wedding photographers or whatever. They all have different requirements with regard to cameras and lenses. So basically it's easier for camera companies to market to those people if those people are in a box. Now, when I joined the Canon Ambassador program back in 2008, when it was just a fledgling program, you know, nobody had ever had an ambassador program before Canon. When I started, we were brought in for our expertise, and we were brought in because the people that were in charge of the program knew that we could sell Canon products just by association. As we progressed down this path of being a Canon ambassador, Canon, in the face of competition from people like Sony and in the face of iPhones, decided that Canon ambassadors should be less about association and more about direct selling to people that were buying cameras. You know, I didn't really want any part of that, but that was kind of like the start of my demise as a Canon ambassador. But anyway, in context of this video, what Canon used to do is they used to put you in a box. So because the majority of my work was weddings, I was a wedding photographer. So they were asking me to shill products which were basically what they thought, not what I thought, what they thought were relevant to other wedding photographers. They like this idea of putting a photographer in a box and the demographic in a box so they can match the two together. Part of being a good photographer is not restricting yourself to just doing one genre of photography or one style or whatever it is, you know. And eventually you end up rebelling, which was basically my case. And in the end, a lot of circumstances led to me finally resigning from the ambassador program. But it gave me a real insight into how important putting photographers in boxes is to a company as big as Canon. We had a video last year, and one of the comments in the video was that because we'd taken some photographs on a beach in a street photography video, that technically wasn't street photography, and that part of the beach should have never been put into the video. If we hadn't got enough content on the street, then we should have been taking things like empty streets, rubbish in the gutters, or workmen's discarded gloves on pavements, would you believe? You know, this is the kind of thing that this guy was saying, because we'd not actually taken street photography on a street. Street photography for me is nothing more than an algorithm friendly box. It's a way of telling people who are interested in pictures of people in a public place, which essentially is what street photography is. We understand what it is that you like, and this is what we do. And I remember a video a while ago in which Gary Winogrand was asked about being a famous street photographer, and he said, it's all nonsense. He said, my first book was on a zoo. Why am I not called a zoo photographer? Why can't we just be a photographer? And he's right. this is the absolute nonsense that we have now, but boxes serve to be a very efficient way of putting two parties together, I guess. But there are certain types of photographers who feel suffocated by being put in a box. Myself and Sarah are of that sort of nature, if you like. You know, I got to the point in my career where I was in this box of being a wedding photographer, and that's what I was known for, and I wanted to go and do something else, because photography is my life, and it would be really boring if I was doing the same thing over and over again for the rest of my life. If you experience different genres of photography, you're increasing your visual vocabulary, and I think that's incredibly important. If you start to increase your visual vocabulary, then your photographs ultimately will become better and better and better. And for Sarah, street is only a small amount of what she does in terms of her output as a photographer. You know, she has 3 projects on the go at the moment. None of them involve street photography, because she's the type of person that wants to experience all photography. She gets bored incredibly quickly if she has to do the same things over and over and over again when it comes to photography. So if you feel like you're stuck in a box, what's the best thing to do about it? Well, you can go and buy books and things like that, and look at other genres on YouTube. You know, if you get different books, you have a different visual palette in front of you. But if you stay inside a box and, you know, you're a street photographer and you only look at street photography books, your visual vocabulary is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you are a street photographer and you want to increase your visual vocabulary, you want to step outside the box and look at things like fashion. Get a Peter Lindbergh book. You'll have a completely different palette in front of you, a different way of taking photographs. And the more that you absorb that kind of thing, your visual vocabulary will increase, and the more likely you are to eventually kind of want to step out of that box. So let me know what you think. You know, I'd be interested to know what people have done, if they've come up to this point where they don't want to step outside of the box because they're frightened of losing their audience, or, you know, or losing some sort of financial benefit from being inside this box. And if you're one of those people and you stepped outside the box, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to know what you did and how you did it to get out of that situation. Given the context of this video, I wanted to show a photographer that has never stayed in a box, that's always moved around, has always done his own thing. And that is the late, great William Klein. And this is Yes. And I got this as a birthday present from Sarah. Now I'm going to put this down because it's heavy for the time being. But personally, William Klein is a huge hero of mine. I mean, a massive, massive hero of mine. I can't tell you how influential he has been through my career, particularly since the early 2000s. It's not just his photography, but it's his ideas on photography, his whole notions of going against the photographic establishment and doing things his way. In an ideal world, I would have all of Klein's work. I'd have all of his books, but I'm not that rich. They are these days an incredible amount of money. But William, before his death, was involved in the production of this, which is called Yes, and basically it's a retrospective, and it covers all of his major bodies of work. So you've got the stuff from New York, which kind of set him up on his career, through to Rome and Tokyo and Paris and Brooklyn, and his fashion work's in there. Some of his paintings are in there. A lot of retrospectives come out after a photographer's died, and the people putting the retrospective together may or may not have had anything to do with the photographer, but Klein was actually involved in the production of this book. When you come to the end of the career and you have a retrospective, for me it's really fascinating to see how the photographer progressed visually throughout the career. So we start off in New York, for example. Again, this is a really heavy book, so I'm a bit reluctant to keep picking it up because, you know, I'm not it's going to be quite difficult to show. But for example, you have these classic Klein pictures in New York with all the blur and the grain, and obviously the quality in this book is higher than it was in his original New York book. And then you go through to things like Tokyo, where he started to work with longer lenses and do things which were a little bit different in terms of the type of subject he was looking at. You know, we're now into the sort of Moriyama kind of feel to the photographs, you know. And obviously Moriyama was influenced majorly by William Klein. But also in Tokyo, we see a lot of telephoto work. Klein started to use telephotos as well as using his normal wide-angle lenses. So it became, you know, that sort of progression in the photography you can really see through the pages of the book. And also what I like in here is we have some of his colour work. I don't know if you can see this on camera. You've got colour work and black and white work together. You can see a real difference in what the photographer was doing. And then, of course, you've got his fashion work as well. Black and white fashion work right the way through to his colour fashion work. And again, I don't know if you can really see that on camera. But this one for me, as a retrospective, I don't think there's been a retrospective published by any photographer that can get anywhere near this. William Klein's, yes, it's not expensive. Get it while it's not expensive. I'll leave a link in the description below. It's an absolutely fantastic book and highly recommended. And I'm going to say right off the bat now, this is going to be one of my top book recommendations for the year, even though we're only in January. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, we'd love to see you subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments at all on any of the content in this video, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.